Welcome to Pontification Nation. I'm your host, Ricky Skittle, coming to you live from my mother's basement as always. This segment of our show is going to be Build the Wall and Crime Will Fall. Essentially, I want to kind of make sure that we all understand um, what this battle is about and what it looks like, because it's not about anything relating to money or economics or anything like that. It's purely political and has to do with a power struggle between the global elite cabal, the Uni Party in DC. The Uni Party is the collection of Democrat and Republicans that really are for the same things. They just pretend to be for different things in order to get elected and stay in power. In any case, so I want to get right into it. So first, I want to start with talking about like what the money really looks like. Okay, so we hear this $4.7 trillion that they want to spend this year, and the $5.7 billion that they want to spend this year, or that Trump wants for the wall and security, and the technology and the ports of entry and all that stuff. So to me, 4.7 trillion. I mean, I don't even really fathom like how much money that really is. It doesn't make sense to me because I can't even. It doesn't. It's just a number. Like, it's such a large number. How do you really like rationalize what it is? So I started lopping off zeros so to help myself understand it. So here you see we have 4.7 billion, 5.7 million, 4.7 million, 5,700, 47,000, and $57. So just to kind of wrap our head around this, if you had a budget of $47,000 a year, what Trump is asking for the wall would be like you spending $57 for a fence around your yard because you wanted to keep people out, or potentially spending $57 a month for an alarm system to keep people out of your house. You would probably think that this is a very good use of your funds. And if your significant other or partner started arguing with you about spending the $57 on the safety and security, you would have serious concerns about their mental health and well-being. And to kind of look at it like this way, 4.7 million and 5,700. I mean, do you think someone who spends $4.7 million a year, a really wealthy person, thinks about $5,700? No. I mean, their watch costs more than $5,700. This is not something that people think about. It happens in minutes. This $57, that's like taking, a family of four out to like the Pizza Hut. We're not even talking about going out to, the Outback or Cheesecake Factory or anything like that. So just I wanted to put this money into perspective so that we can start our conversation understanding that this is not about money. It never has been. It never will be. Um, and then to give a little bit better idea of what the government spends now, for all just for full disclosure, these are 2011 numbers. They're based off of a federal spending budget of $3.8 trillion, and now we know we're wanting to spend 4.3 to 4.8. So these numbers are not correct, but they are smaller than what they are today. In 1 second, the U.S. government spends more money than most people make in a year. In 1 minute, they spend more money than most people amass in their lifetime. Um, here's a good example of $100 million equals 1 year of work for 3,500 average people. In 1 hour, the U.S. government spends 435 million, and in one day they spend 10.4 billion. Yes, that's billion with a B. So we're talking about, by lunchtime, the government has spent what Trump is asking for the wall every single day. By the time you go to lunch, the government has spent what Trump is asking for the wall every single day. And the worst part about the spending, and it's actually probably a good part for us now, is that not all of this money ever it gets spent. Not all of this money goes to where it's supposed to go. So just so we understand fully where the negotiation position of the Democrats is, this has nothing to do with wasteful use of resources. This has nothing to do with money. It's just simply not. And here's a great thing. I'm going to put this in the notes. I'm not going to sit here and read it. Not even the executive summary, but I want you guys to look at this and it gives you an idea. Money for Nothing by Senator Coburn in 2012. He gives an executive summary talking about how, the government is terrible at spending money and they're terrible stewards of your money, right? We all already knew this. So it kind of goes through. We'll look at the contents though. $1 billion unspent lingers in inactive grant accounts. Poorly drafted legislation results in unspent money. Earmarks funds to projects that don't exist. Transportation earmarks, EPA earmarks. Congress approves more funding than a program needs or can be spent. Etc. This goes on. Especially the national emergency relief efforts. There's something in here about the Detroit schools that have millions of unspent money. It's a real shame. The way the government is a steward of our funds. If any of us behaved like this, we would be bankrupt and most likely dead, because there just wouldn't be any place for us to function in life. We probably would have died by now. But in any case, this is very good to read and understand about, how, we all know how terrible our government is with money, but for those of us who may be new, who are just recently taking red pills, just recently waking up, this is a good place to start thinking about how the government spends our money. Here is a good example. This is coming from, Mick Mulvaney over at the OMB. Balances a budget authority for the budget for fiscal year 2019. Unobligated balances. This is what this whole paper is about. Money for Nothing. Unobligated balances. It refers to balances that have not yet been committed by contract or other legally binding action by the government. So this is money that has been legislatively authorized, legislatively appropriated, but has not been actually spent by the agency yet. Now, a lot of this will be spent. This money gets spent because, government projects are large projects and they cover multiple years. These are not things that happen overnight. So there is always going to be unobligated balances on the books. But let's look at what our current projected unobligated balances are going to be. So here we're looking at our 2017 actual, $837 billion. Here, 2018 estimate is $880 billion. 2019 estimate is over $1 trillion. Now, that is our money. It's not their money. It's not the government's money. The government doesn't get money. They only confiscate money. So of those $1 trillion in unobligated funds, you have money that you have committed to this government through your taxes sitting there, idle, being wasted. Now, we're talking about, so 1 trillion and 5.7 billion. That is like someone who has $1,000 spending $5.70. Again, we're not talking about a significant amount of money, relatively speaking. So legally, Trump can certainly take unobligated balances from an executive branch or a dead program, or however you want to look at it. And I'm sure that they've been working on this. I know Mick has been talking about it for months how he's been looking around the federal balance sheet trying to find places for more money to build the wall. And so I think this is going to be the perfectly great place to take this from. We don't want to get into declaring a national emergency. I mean, granted, if we have to, we will. But one thing that I've noticed about Trump, what is Trump? What did he always say? First of all, during the campaign, you'll never know what I'm gonna do. I don't understand why we telegraph all this stuff, right? You'll never know what my plan is until it happens. So all of this disinformation, I mean, Trump thrives on this stuff. But at the end of the day, what he's always said related to the wall is we all know I have one very powerful option, and I'm willing to use that very powerful option, but I would like to get this done legislatively. I don't believe, and I didn't look it up, but I don't believe he has ever actually talked about like a national emergency, or maybe he has floated the idea a little bit. But in the speeches, in the formal stuff that he's given, he's talked about how he has one very powerful option that he would prefer not to use. I think he is threatening the national emergency, but I think in reality, he's probably just using the unobligated funds with a stroke of the pen and a click of a button at OMB. And he's probably already working. I mean, he just dispatched more troops to the border. I'm sure that he's already started to work on this in anticipation that the Democrats won't do anything. So we have $1 trillion. So it's certainly not about money. And here we have at Big League Politics, Patrick Halley reported yesterday that the Pentagon confirmed that the wall can be built. And so 10 U.S. Code 284, support for counter drug activities and activities to counter transnational organized crime, allows President Trump to direct the Secretary of Defense to secure the southern border with a wall, the Pentagon confirms. So essentially, we know that we can do this, right? It's in the law. And if you want to look at the law, I pulled it up right over here. And here it's right here, subsection G. So the authority provided in this section to support counter-drug activities or activities related to transnational crime by the Department of Defense is in addition to and except as provided in paragraph 2, not subject to the other requirements of this chapter. So basically, we have already given the commander-in-chief the ability to build a wall, and he can do it with unobligated funds that currently sit on the books and have been there for years. It just keeps growing. I was looking at it going back through like 2012 because I didn't think Obama would have any unobligated funds, but he really didn't spend his unobligated funds. But most presidents do, from time to time, spend them, and it's usually on national defense. Just to give you a little bit of background on like state of emergencies in this country, there's 31 national emergencies going on. One big thing that I've that really kind of noticed, and it's when we look at this. Let's just look at these emergencies. So here's Donald Trump's emergencies. Blocking property of people who are doing bad things in Nicaragua. Which is obviously trying to fix the problem. Imposing certain sanctions in the event of foreign intelligence in a United States election. So this is basically putting the UK and Russia and etc., all of our quote unquote allies on notice. If you continue to try to spy on me and my campaigns and destroy our democracy, we will, sanction you. Puts UK on notice. They can't do this anymore. And then obviously we know about this one. This is the storm, right? The blocking of property. The blocking of property related to human rights and abuse, corruption. So we know that is the emergency that he's going to use when the time comes. But here we have in Burundi, and again, Trump has a Nicaragua, so I just want to make this clear. Engaging in significant malicious cyber activities, suspending certain persons, they're contributing to the situation in Venezuela, um, uh, contributing to conflict in Central African Republic, South Sudan, Ukraine, Yemen, blocking property of transnational organizations, which targets crime centers like the Yakuza in Japan and Camorra in Italy. Um, you know, certain transactions related to Libya, um, you know, Somalia again, North Korea. You know, the one thing that all of these things have in common is that they aren't going on in our country, right? These are national emergencies. I don't know if I would define most of these things as national emergencies. I look at them as, humanitarian crises, transnational, global issues. Certainly we don't want what's going on in Somalia and Yemen and the Congo and Burma, wherever. We don't want these people behaving in this way. But at the end of the day, this national emergency stuff is really about international stuff, and it's not even really about national stuff. So I think that while if he does go this route, he'll be okay in the courts in the long run. But I just don't. I think that there's a better way to do it, so we don't have to go through the litigation and all of that. I'll put this in there. This talks about emergency powers and how you can use them. It gives you an idea, and then kind of look at that. You can look at it on your own. And I want to end this with kind of talking about what is really going on here. What is really going on? We look at this, and one of my favorite lines that kind of describes everything is if you can heal the symptom but not affect the cause, it's kind of like trying to heal a gunshot wound with gauze. If you can heal the symptom but not affect the cause, it's kind of like trying to heal a gunshot wound with gauze. That is what we are doing on our southern border. We are trying to heal symptoms. The symptom is illegal immigration. The cause is our laws and the way that we operate in this country. Okay, and I'm going to get into that right now. But let's first start talking about one of the problems with this. Trump the other day, we are not even into February, and the cost of illegal immigration so far this year is $18.9 billion with a B. The cost Friday was $603 million. There are at least 772,342 illegal aliens, not the 11 million that have been reported for years in our country. So ridiculous, DHS. Now that's a pretty specific number, 25,772,342. I'd be willing to bet that the president has information that is allowing him to know that number. When he says at least, because there's probably more since when that number was given to him or presented to him. But I would be willing to bet that he didn't just say, well, I'm going to put a really specific number so it sounds legit. No, I believe that he has more information than we do. So the cost, but let's figure out why the cost is that way, right? Why? How are people coming across our border costing us $19 billion a month, $20 billion a month? How does that happen? Here we go. More than 7 in 10 California immigrant households are on welfare. This is Census Bureau data analyzed. I'm going to read a little bit of this. Census Data Bureau analyzed by the Center for Immigration Studies finds that about 72% of households headed by non-citizens and immigrants use one or more form of taxpayer-funded welfare programs in California, the number one immigrant receiving state in the United States. Meanwhile, only about 35% of households headed by native-born Americans use welfare in California. This is just as an aside, fascinating to me. I can't imagine that we have this many people on welfare in this country, but it makes sense, I guess, as to why we spend all that money on it. There has to be a better option for some of these people. Welfare was meant to be a stopgap, not a permanent solution, and that is the problem with what is going on in our cities. People feel like the reason why they feel like there is no hope is because they're given everything that they got by the government, and if they get off of welfare, then they would have to work full time. And I have an antidote about this that I'll tell you in a minute. All four states with the largest foreign populations, including California, have extremely high use of welfare by immigrant households. In Texas, for example, nearly 70% of households headed by immigrants use taxpayer funded welfare. Meanwhile, only 35% of native born households in Texas are on welfare. In New York and Florida, a majority of households headed by immigrants and non citizens are on welfare. Overall, about 63% of immigrant households use welfare, while only 35% of native born households use welfare. President Trump's administration is looking to soon implement a policy that protects American taxpayers' dollars. And when this is the one. The immigration controls would be a boon for American taxpayers in the form of an annual $57.4 billion tax cut, the amount taxpayers spend every year on paying for the welfare, crime, and schooling costs of the country's mass importation of 1.5 million new, mostly low-skilled immigrants on an annual basis. So getting back to symptoms and causes. The cause of our illegal immigration problem is these types of policies and programs where people come here and get on welfare and their children are born and they get free education. I mean, this 57.4, that's not even talking about the education. I mean, those people that just that were on strike, the teachers in LA, I mean, you got a 44-person classroom in high school. That's literally insane. Like you can't, that's too many children for a teacher to be able to reach, and so this is just, counting whatever it's counting. It's not even counting the whole cost of immigration. So I say to Trump, build the wall with the unobligated funds, forget about the national emergency, don't let these people litigate this. And let's move forward, because as soon as the wall is built, the illegal immigration will decrease, as we know, and then we'll be able to focus on fixing the ports of entry. But let's get the wall fixed first, and let's get the border secure, and then we'll start worrying about the tech and the Nancy Pelosi donors. That's about all for this segment. Build wall and crime will fall. We do have something coming out on the left's quote unquote new abortion position, where it's okay to kill babies after they're born, coming up, and that's going to be pretty interesting. I've got a lot of good information there about how much money we spend on abortion in this country. I'd really like for you to subscribe to the channel and click the bell for notifications so that you can get the next episode, which will be, is this what you really want? Is this really what you want? And thanks a lot, and we will talk to you soon.